on WebEx, because as you recall, they came and presented their plans for relocating to Kansas, and I tried to make them bring us some samples, but since they're unable to join us in person today, we're going to have just a status update on how things are going from their new plant. So do we have them on WebEx?
Yes, we do.
David with us? Great, welcome. We have David, the CEO and president. So welcome, we're anxious to hear your report.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity, and duly noted, I need to get some cheese out there, and by this time next year, we should have some cheese made in Kansas, which I think will be even better and more enjoyable for the groups. We'll have to make that happen in the future. But it's an honor to be here today to give an update on our project. I was asked to keep this brief and leave some time for questions as well. So again, David Allum, CEO of Hillmar Cheese Company. I don't know if there's a slide deck or not. I'd send some slides. If there's not, that's okay.
We are
there
getting
we go.
those. We see
Perfect.
The slides.
Perfect. And you can go ahead and advance to the next one, please. So just a quick reminder of who Hillmar Cheese Company is. We're a private company established in 1984, founded by a group of dairy farmer families. There's a picture of them there on the slide, still owned by those same families into the second and third generation now of ownership. We're a large producer of natural American cheese, so cheddar, Monterey Jack, pepper jack, those type of varieties. And we also produce whey protein and lactose. Whey protein as an ingredient into infant formula, protein bars, and beverages as well. We have manufacturing facilities in California, Texas, and one under construction in Kansas that we're here to talk about today. We export to over 50 countries around the globe. And most of you aren't very familiar with our name because all of the products we sell, while our cheese is, I would say, just about everywhere across the U.S., it's packaged by private labelers and other brands who convert and put that under their own brand labels as well. So let's maybe advance to the next slide. To fully understand Hillmar, so you have to understand a bit of the Hillmar way, our purpose, vision, values, our purpose, kind of the why we exist, the vision, the what we do, and the values, kind of how we operate. And just for this group, just quickly, throughout kind of this improving lives, how do we do that? What does that look like? Sometimes people ask me, you're a cheese company, how do you improve lives? Well, I don't know who hasn't had their life improved by cheese. That's maybe an easier, more obvious one. The other is just producing specialty infant formula ingredients that literally improve the quality of life for a mother of an infant in the first 90 days of life. We're also looking to have an environment where employees can be respected, grow and develop, grow their career, provide for their family, and really nourish the communities in which we operate. That's how we see us improving lives. And from a value standpoint, we're a big believer in long-term mutually beneficial relationships. So our owners think in generational terms, not in quarter-by-quarter terms. So as we embark on this endeavor in Kansas, in Dodge City, Kansas, that's the type of relationship we're looking for, is to develop a long-term mutually beneficial relationship. So we can advance to the next slide. And so I think it was about 2 years ago this time, I think I was running around the Capitol visiting with some of you, I believe, in this room, talking about this dream we had. We were coming out of the, I'd say, COVID malaise, and things had stalled out a bit, but we had a shovel-ready project that we wanted to get rolling with in Southwest Kansas that represented over a $600 million investment and 250 new jobs in the area, and we said we'd be operational in 2024. Well, I'm back here today to say we're still on target to be operational in fall of 2024 and deliver those 250 jobs. And I can tell you that's been, our investment has been well north of the $600 million that we committed to. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see today that dream is becoming a reality. So 18 months later, fast from our groundbreaking, fast forward the clock, this is what the project looks like from the outside. Go to the next slide. We've got about 500 people on site today, contractors on site, finishing out the building. The building's largely finished at this point. Now we are filling that with processing equipment. loads and loads of stainless steel to make the cheese and the whey products that that facility will produce. We can look at the next slide. It's another fun graphic, at least fun if you're into these projects and construction like myself, but you can see kind of the top left, the helicopter some air vents. Side, this cone, stainless cone you see being lifted, tall building is the bottom of it.
David, I think we lost you a little bit,
Okay.
audio-wise.
Great. You have me back now?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
So I'll refresh this slide. Just this was some pictures of equipment being put into place by a helicopter and an air handling unit. And then the stainless steel cone you see is the bottom of a spray dryer that will be used to dry that whey protein that I spoke of as well. And then the next slide we can advance to just a little hiring update. So this is quickly becoming out of date. I think I'm already up to 35 to 40 new hires on site that we've brought onto our team. We had a job fair in February attended by people over 500 people. We've brought some of those folks on board, and we're going to be having another job fair this summer and another big one this fall as we bring on the last remaining folks before we start operation this fall and start producing cheese there. And the next slide, just kind of in conclusion, before we turn it over to questions, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thanks to the members of this committee that helped us from the early days, and really thanks to the really Dodge City, the county, the state level, all across Kansas. We've just had a tremendous experience. And at the groundbreaking, I said, you know, it's time to get the heck into Dodge. And I can tell you now, I'm glad we did. And we're looking forward to building out that long-term, mutually beneficial relationship that I spoke to earlier. With that, I'll, Mr. Chairwoman, if it's okay, open it up for questions.
Well, we're glad you're here too, and thank you for the update, and I will open it up. Committee, any questions? Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the summer, I was on one of the Southwest region tours and had a chance to see it from a bus, so hopefully we can visit on ground sometime. I was just curious to see, you said you have 25 new hires. What is the topmost estimated number of jobs being created by your sector?
So on the processing side of the we'll have
For some reason, we can't hear you again.
okay. I don't know if it's the internet. I think
There
I'm
we go.
off mute. Sorry about that.
There we go.
250 jobs is what we're looking to have on the site when it's at capacity next year.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the update. We look forward to when you're back in Topeka and hand delivering those samples. But in the meantime, keep up the good work, and we appreciate you coming to Kansas. So,
Hey, thank you, Ms. Chairman. Appreciate it.
thank you. Committee, we will now turn our attention to a hearing on House Bill 2745. We will open that hearing with an overview by our reviser, Charles Reimer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2745 provides an exemption from all occupational licensing or other credentialing fees for the spouses of active military service members. The bill amends a current statute, KSA 48-3406, that provides for expedited occupational licensing, certification, and registration for military service members and for individuals who have established or intend to establish a residency in Kansas. As amended by the House Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, the bill passed the House 119-0. The heart of this bill is at pages 7 to 8 at new subsection U. As introduced, this subsection provided that applicants who are military spouses of active military service members are exempt from all fees assessed by any licensing body, to include application, licensing, registration, or certification fees. The House Committee amended this provision to clarify and broaden the scope of the exemption. Added language exempted renewal, endorsement, reciprocity, and any criminal background report fees, whether assessed by the licensing body or the KBI. Licensing bodies are directed to adopt rules and regulations to implement the provision. I would note that licensing body is defined in the current law as an official agency, board, or other entity of the state that authorizes individuals to practice a profession in the state and issues a license, registration, certificate, permit, or other authorization to an individual so authorized. So a fairly broad definition. The bill has introduced, also amended the definition of complete application, and that's to conform with the new fee exemption at subsection U. The new language provides that an application by a military spouse of an active military service member is considered a complete application without the submission of fees as would ordinarily be required. Receipt of a complete application is important because that's what starts the clock ticking on the time requirements of the statute, and also is a requirement for just in general the application of the other provisions. Finally, the House Committee amended the definition of applicant in the current law with respect to military service members and their spouses by adding a requirement that the military service member or spouse resides or plans to reside in the state due to the assigned military station of the military service member or spouse. And if enacted, the bill would become effective July 1st, 2024. There is a fiscal note for this bill. It's extensive. Pretty much every licensing body has additional expenses that they believe this would require due to, I think, primarily reduced fees coming in. And that is what the bill does.
Thank you. Questions for the revisor? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When I read the definition in section 1, reading the one, it says applicant means an individual who is, and then skipping A and just going straight to B, an individual who has established or intends to establish residency in this state. That is not a military person, correct?
Correct.
So any person who intends to establish or says they intend to establish residency in this state could be exempt from the fees?
No. So that is current law. The bill before you exempts only the spouses of current military service members from the fees.
I understand that's current law, but I guess I had never seen that someone that says, I'm going to move to Kansas would be exempt.
Yes, under current law, you are correct, Senator. The requirement is you establish or intend to establish residency in the state, and that's for an individual. Now, I'd note that, you know, with respect to if you have concern about that, the bill, this current law, really makes a distinction between military service members and other individuals who might fall within the law. You know, military service members, there's a 15-day deadline to get their credential. They are entitled to a temporary permit, whereas other individuals, the wording is may, the licensing body may issue a temporary permit. So there is a distinction.
All right. Well, thank you. And Madam Chairman, I don't know why I hadn't noticed that or was unaware, but we'll have an opportunity to work the bill. I certainly support the military or military spouse, but just any person who basically says, well, I'm going to move to Kansas, and because I interpret the word intends to establish residency, do they intend to do it next month or when they retire? But anyway, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this kind of piggybacks on what Senator Peck is asking. So line 14, is what we're looking at. Does this bill state that if you're intending to move to Kansas, that all of these agencies will waive their fees for application? No.
No.
But so can you just explain this further? Because that's what we're thinking you said.
Okay, so line 14 that you referenced and Senator Peck referenced is in current law, okay? This bill provides a fee exemption for the spouses of military service members.
Carves that out.
Correct. And you can see that if you want to look at the bill, if you look at pages 8 and 9, which is kind of the core of the bill. Turn to it here. If you look on the top of page 8, okay, and actually it starts at the bottom of page 7, but the top of page 8, applicants who are military spouses of active military service members shall be exempt from all fees assessed by any licensing body, and then it goes on. So that's what this bill applies to.
Other questions for the revisor? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to proponent testimony. First, we have Master Sergeant Eugene Bradley. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, ma'am. Master Sergeant Eugene Bradley with the Kansas Adjutant General's Department. Thank you for giving us a chance to give proponent testimony on this piece of legislation today. Taking care of our military families is at the forefront of every leader's mind when it comes to the military. And this year has produced a multitude of military-related legislation to support guardsmen, the active duty component, retirees, disabled veterans, and this one that directly supports our family and spouses. Other testimony will discuss the direct impact this will have on the families as well as the spouses' professional careers, but the Adjutant General's Department is also focused on how this positions our state for future development of the Guard and Kansas military community as a whole. The military is entering what the DoD is calling the Great Power Competition, and as every branch seeks to modernize its force structure, the equipment and platforms and facilities, these are all due and going through modernization efforts across the country. As Department of Defense identifies locations for future missions and personnel attached to those missions, it is legislation like this that the DoD pays attention to when updating and moving its resources across the country. There's nowhere more prevalent than this right now here in Topeka, where the 190th is jockeying to obtain and be the relocation source for a new fleet of KC-46s, the Pegasus. This new mission attached to Forbes Field would bring tens of millions of dollars to the state and position Forbes Field for the next generation of total force integration. This is also very important when it comes to any future base realignment and base closures that we may see. 24/6 is one step forward in improving our state's grade with the Department of Defense Liaison's Office as well. They've submitted a report card and developed priorities for each state, and right now the top of that list is military spouse employment and economic opportunities. So this bill satisfies that and moves Kansas into the best practices category. So with that, I will close and stand for questions when appropriate.
Thank you so much. We'll get all the proponent testimony in and then open it up for questions. Next, we have Jason Watkins on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Watkins, Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. Pleasure to be here. The Chamber introduced this bill at the request of the Chamber's Military Affairs Council, which includes a group of citizens, business owners out of Wichita that support McConnell Air Force Base, as well as leadership from McConnell. Sergeant talked a little bit about the best practices. The Chamber did a city-to-city visit with Colorado Springs. Of course, there's a large Air Force base and college out there. And that's really when the conversation about best practices started. And why is that important? Sergeant also talked about the fact that, in a way, all of the states are competing for assignments from the Department of Defense. And they look at what is your state doing to work with the military, take care of the military, including military spouses. So it's one of the reasons that it was important to the chamber. I think it's also just the right thing to do. You see somebody like the sergeant in his uniform, and it's common to walk up to him and say, thank you for your service. We know our servicemen sacrifice. The spouses of our military members don't wear uniforms, but they sacrifice as well. So they don't often get the, hey, thank you for your service, but they do serve. And this bill would help recognize their contribution. In my testimony in the House, I talked about the fact that this is also a difference maker for military families. Some of these licenses are $60, some of them are a couple $100. And a lot of people in this room have probably reached a point where if they have to spend a couple $100, that's not a big decision. They're not going to sacrifice anything over spending a couple $100. But for some of our military families, that couple $100 expenditure can be the difference between buying some clothes for the kids as they return to school, or maybe even an evening out with the family to have dinner. So it's important in that regard. That also means that this legislation, if it became law, would help folks get to work faster. And that would also benefit our business communities. So it's a pretty straightforward bill, as the revisor said. This did pass the House 119-0. It was amended in the House Commerce Committee to address some concerns of the Board of Technical Professions who are here today as well. We were supportive of those amendments. So in closing, Madam Chair, this is good common sense legislation, sends the right message to the members of the military, also sends the right message to the United States Department of Defense that Kansas supports our military and that they should continue to consider investments in Kansas when it comes to the assignment of our military. So with that, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And our final proponent is Amber Wilbert, President of the Auxiliary, presenting the written testimony provided by Nicole E. Inskeep. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on the importance of this bill. My name is Amanda Wilbert. I know there's some confusion there, and I'm the INGAS, the Enlisted Association of the National Guard of Kansas Auxiliary President. But maybe more importantly, I am a military spouse, and I'm a licensed professional. So I'm directly impacted, not necessarily one of the impacts of this bill. I'm already here, I'm already licensed, but I am the type of person that this bill is the target for. House Bill 2745 provides assistance to a very untapped pool of professional individuals in the state of Kansas, our military spouses. These men and women are often balancing a professional career with taking care of their family. Their military spouse is often gone. Sometimes the military spouse heads to the state of their new adventure before the family follows, and it can be quite challenging at times. And so this bill reduces the burden on moving families, relieving them of the stress over the cost of the credentialing and licensing fees when they enter and they move to a new location. As the Air Force and the Army Reserves and the National Guard are bringing different missions to different states, this bill helps set the state of Kansas forward. It provides us as a viable location option for these individuals that are required to move in service to their country. And so this is just one advocacy piece that we can do for our military families and help providing them the smallest, even little amount of support as they are dealing with that challenge of moving and being in a brand new location. Thank you all for your time, and with that, I'll stand for questions when it is important.
Thank you so much, and my apologies, Amanda.
No, that's all right. I know there was some confusion.
That's okay. Questions for the proponent, Senator Dahl.
Thank you. I'm not sure which one of you, Jason, probably. And this is this is a great bill. This is everything. But why isn't anybody from Fort Riley or Leavenworth, or why is this just all Air Force here from McConnell?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm glad you brought it up. The Adjutant General's office is represented by the sergeant, and they're here because the governor signed off on them providing testimony. And the sergeant may be better to answer this question, but like our leadership at McConnell is not allowed to engage in politics. They can't come lobby on a bill like this. So that's why nobody's here. Nobody's here from McConnell, nobody's here from Fort Riley, and that's the reason why. They're not allowed to. But I'm really glad you asked that question, because I
like it when they say that's a good question. It makes me.
We have Senator Dietrich, then Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sergeant, could you come to the podium? So I'm thinking of this logistically. So, and it's a great bill. I'm not questioning that. But as a military spouse moves into our state, how do they go to, what do they take to a licensing agency to show that they're the spouse of an active duty military person?
So the spouse of a military service member should have a dependent card. That would be one form of identification, or they could provide their, there are a couple different ways that could be done, but generally you would either use a dependent card or a set of PCS orders or orders identifying the service member's location here in Kansas.
And may I just follow up with that? So then do they send that, scan it, hand deliver it to the agency? There's so many agencies that you could be applying to. I'm just wanting to expedite it.
I would have to double check, but I do believe the dependence card would be able to be scanned. We get finicky about our DoD CAT cards, but the dependence card is an official federal licensed identification card, so it could be sent over.
I'm just thinking of the practicalities, so that maybe is something you might want to think about. Thank you.
Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the testimony, being affiliated so closely with Fort Riley and our entire Flint Hills region, having so many military families. I'm sure the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce would be here. I'm not sure they were aware of the bill coming forward. But I know we did a similar, I guess, a reciprocity program for nursing and healthcare. So my question, I'm not sure who can answer this. We often talk about military value when at the federal level when they are deciding funds and how they go. You indicated that several states already have this. I wanted to know if someone can provide us with states already have this so we can figure out that mechanism on how it goes forward. And the other is I know that the rotations for most military families is around 2 years. Does this give enough time? I don't know how long a process takes for, we're just removing the fees. I don't know how long it takes for even things to be processed. Would this be enough for them to get integrated in 2 years and move on? I'm not sure if that addresses any of that.
I think the sergeant might speak to this as well, but a couple of years ago, this legislature passed a reciprocity bill, and I think you were referring to that, but it went beyond nursing. It was really all of the professions. And so that put in law that the agencies not only had to grant that license or permit certification if where they were coming from and had that previous license, if it was the same or greater than our requirements, then they had to grant it, but it also had language in there on timelines in terms of how fast they had to move forward with that. So you did great work a couple of years ago on the licensure side in terms of speeding up the process and recognizing previous training and certifications, et cetera. This is the next step in that process, which eliminates the licensing fees. And I would say this includes renewals. So the military spouse that spoke a little bit ago, if she has a license or certification that has to be renewed, that will benefit her too in the future.
We will reach out to the Defense Agency to get their listing of states that have this current level of legislation on hold, or on the books, I should say. And then, yeah, and kind of going off of what he was commenting, the idea of being able to develop a career, and I was actually discussing with the auxiliary president beforehand, was if they are establishing a career here and we do make it easier for them to establish a career here, Sometimes that 2 years is at the end of a career, and that's more likely to hold them here in the state of Kansas if they're actually able to quickly establish themselves and develop.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, and thank you both, and Jason, for your service. I will draw the committee's attention to written proponent testimony that are listed there. There's quite a few. We also have neutral. We have a neutral conferee who's available for questions. Is that correct? Larry Carnes, Executive Director, Board of Technical Professions. Would you care to address the committee?
Yes. Thank you, Senator Erickson. Again, I'm Larry Carnes. I'm the Executive Director of the Technical Professions Board. We license people who have advanced degrees in engineering, architecture, geology, scientific sort of degrees. This bill was originally House Bill 2066 a couple of years ago, and what it was intended to do was to expedite the licensing process for military service members. We've implemented that. If you're a service member coming here, you're put on a fast track to get a license. That was the whole purpose. This bill wants to waive fees for military spouses. I'm in support of that. My concern was, and I was the one that asked them to amend it in the House, was that it didn't address somebody coming to Kansas. It said anybody anywhere. You could be a spouse at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, have no intention to come to Kansas for any reason, and for some reason want to get a reciprocity license with one of our agencies, and your fees were waived. The purpose of the bill was for economic development, to help people coming to Kansas and make the process better for them. The sponsors of the bill recognized that was the intent. The House recognized it and made that amendment, and I'm pleased with the bill as it's amended. But if you have questions about this process, my agency works within this bill. We expedite the licensing. As Senator Peck pointed out, we've got this provision in it for any individual who establishes or intends to establish residency of Kansas. Very strange provision. We've had to enact regulations to define what does it mean to intend to come to Kansas. I think that was, my own personal opinion, was overreaching. I think this was a military service bill. They added that in. It opened up to everybody to get an expedited licensing process. And not just an expedited licensing process, but it also lowered the standards to get a license in Kansas. Except for engineers, which have to have substantially equivalent education and that sort of thing. The other professions that I license don't have to have a substantially equivalent background coming from another state if they intend to come to Kansas or reside here. And that lowering of standards I opposed 2 years ago when this bill was being proposed. We don't have to live in Kansas to be licensed in Kansas. My Kansas licensees don't have to be licensed in Missouri or Nebraska or Texas or Washington to practice in those states. These practices practice remotely. An engineering firm might have a project in Utah, and they'd have to get licensed in Utah for that project, but they'd still be here in Kansas. So anyway, I don't have problems with this bill, and I'm just making comments on what happened a couple of years ago. So.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Carnes? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Senator Erickson, or Madam Chairman. I'm sorry, my mind's elsewhere. I apologize. So would you, since you don't have any problems with the bill, would you consider changing your testimony from neutral to proponent?
Certainly. I was neutral before because I just simply wanted to provide information for the committee so they'd understand what the bill was doing.
Any other questions for Mr. Carnes? Seeing none, thank you, and thank you for being here. We also do have written neutral only by Alexandra Blasi, and it is Blasi, we learned. We've got Blazy Blasi, tomato, so that is correct, Executive Secretary of the Board of Pharmacy. We have no opponents to the bill, so with that, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2745. Okay, committee, buckle up. We all know where we're at in the process. I will let you know that the plan was tomorrow to work the unemployment insurance bill. And as I made note when we heard that bill last Thursday, or when we talked about it, There was a conformity issue with the U.S. Department of Labor once it came out of the House. We thought we would have a solution in place for that, and we currently do not. I'm being told we are close, but we are not ready to work that bill until we know we have an amendment that the conformity issue is taken care of. So we have moved that to Monday. We will work the unemployment insurance bill on Monday, and that gives our reviser time to get the wording for the conformity amendment so that we can work that on Monday. So tomorrow, what we will do, we are going to have a hearing on a concurrent, on 1620. We will hear that. And then we will work this bill that we heard today, 2745, and also House Bill 2790. So please be prepared if you have any amendments or concerns with that. I will let you know that on the bill that we heard today, I will be bringing an amendment simply because there's a definition on page 1 of the bill and another definition regarding what a military service member is. And we just want to make sure that those are congruent because we just want to clarify that. So nothing big, just making sure the definitions are congruent. And Charles, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Any other questions, concerns, discussion from the committee? Senator Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So does the Thursday's agenda is kind of as we've already gotten it, you think?
Thursday's agenda is a hearing on 1620 and then working those two bills. Correct. Yes, that is tomorrow. Sorry, that's okay. That's okay. I appreciate everyone's flexibility and apologize. As soon as we have any more details, we will let you know, but that is the plan as of now. Any questions? Great, we are adjourned.